Okay, now we're going to look at higher threat level of deployment, counter deployment. We're going to try and stop the person from deploying his weapon. Now, it's pretty simple for this person to add a whole level of danger and complexity simply by putting his free hand in between us. All right, so for a person who has utter confidence that they're scaring the hell out of you, they're going to walk up and display the weapon. We talk about this. That's very common in street situations. No trained people and trained killers and assassins and all the people you're going to run into on a movie set or in a video game probably aren't doing that. But watch real surveillance footage of what often happens in street scenarios. Now the next level of this becomes when the person is thinking ahead a little bit more, or simply planning ahead and doesn't want even the thought of you being able to come between him and his deployment. So whether it's in the front or the small, the back, we can simply add another very realistic and very simple, which means it's going to happen in the street level. He can keep you away with this during his deployment. All right? So maybe he wants to touch you to get the shock effect going, and then he may not need the second hand to lift his hoodie. He's got the weapon from here and from here. All right, something as simple as that now creates all kinds of problems because you've got a barrier between you and him. You know? All right, so we're going to look at that scenario now. We can do it from the front if you want, or the small to the back. Because the idea is we have to get past this barrier. Okay? So put it in here. You got to put it in here. Josh. Remember, we're still dealing with counter deployment. We're trying to get there before he is. So the idea here is, as he goes to grab me, we need to use the same concepts as we did before to get on the outside of this arm. And then depending how early I am, circle behind him is probably what's going to happen. All right? So remember when we dealt with, for example, one hand grabs, and the person bent their arm a little bit, it's pretty easy to move the person and start getting behind them. For the empty hand self-defense, we'd go to the choke, whatever, but again, I have to control that second arm. So if he pushes me hard, we treat that as the pushing concept like we did in the empty hand section. These concepts are the same. The difference is I want to try and pull it if I can't get behind him. Okay? Now, if he's got the weapon in the front, I'm going to have to inside wrist him. If he's got it in the back, then I may be able to get there before he does. So once again, all the training that we do with the pushes and the shoves and stuff begins to compound itself and help you in this area. That's why your techniques need to be related to each other conceptually and tactically. Right? And so when the guy pushes on me, I use the same ideas we did in the first program to get on the outside of that arm. Okay, and then as he tries to pull the gun out, I had to get here. Now at this point, you don't really have control of the weapon. You prevented him deploying it, so you're going to have to go to two hands, put him on the ground probably, and then we're going to cover that later on what to do. But you're trying to stop him from getting that weapon out, which you've done in that position, but it's not great control. So again, I can use the outside drag as well, which we talked about in the push section. If he's already in contact with me, I can push it across and grab it, but I want to get behind him. Now in this case, I got there early, and my hands are actually on his fingers. This is a better place to grab, because by grabbing the fingers, he can't use them to grab the weapon. At this point, maybe I can get it out here, maybe I can force it behind here. The point being is, as a grip, it's easier to grab somebody's fingers than it is to grab by the wrist. Now, yeah, you could try to do some finger lock. I'm not a big fan of finger locks. Really, on a certain level, they're a joke. They really only work in the academy when you're sitting there and going, ow, ow, ow. And there's people out there advocating, not a lot of them, because most people are smarter than that, but anyone who's actually been in a real fight and seen fingers broken, I've seen fingers cut off in minor car accidents, I've seen fingers cut off in shop class when I was a kid in junior high, and nobody fell down screaming. So just twisting on somebody's finger when you're in a relaxed state in an academy, yeah, the guy will jump and do a jig and anything you want because there's nothing at stake. Once you get a high level of adrenaline, I've seen people's fingers injured in rugby games, and we didn't even know it till after the game, and there was nobody's life or safety at stake, just that your mind is on other things. Your heart rate goes up and your blood leaves the small extremities because you're adrenalized. So really, only people who've never been in real fights think you're going to solve high stress, high danger situations by playing this little piggy. It's a really, really bad idea. It's dangerous and stupid. But as a way to control somebody, when he comes here, pushes on me, I can get here early as a handle, you know, to grab here. I'm going to have a better grip than on his wrist. And at this moment, I realize, hey, I got the guy's finger. Well, he's feeling the pain because I probably will have to end up breaking it. He's not going to fall down. And once I've broken it, once this finger breaks, I don't have much control over the guy. That's the problem with these dumb locks. If I sit here and squeeze on it, we're relaxed and we're in a film setting here. Of course, he's going to do whatever I want. In a real fight, he may not even know I broke his finger. Like I say, it happens all the time in sporting events. We're not even talking about life and death situations. So in this case, I'm here. If I'm later, I got an inside wrist. Now, part of the inside wrist is I'm pushing down. And hopefully, if he puts the other hand on there, oh man, I got to try to get on the inside there too, and prevent that from happening. Now, if I was a peace officer, I may have my own sidearm. Maybe I can control him with two hands and I can get out. These are tactical things you need to practice. But at this moment, our leverage is basically even. I've stalemated the situation. I'm going to have to increase the leverage. That usually means putting him on the ground. And that's another step, which adds another level of complexity. But the idea that I'm going to be able to solve every problem with a person much bigger and stronger than me when I have a late response is unrealistic. Okay, so if you've been doing our first program, we have a lot of pushes and shoves. The concept's the same. When he pushes on me, I'm going to use either this one, or if I'm early and I see it, sometimes I can move, and I just want to give him a little pull. That's what helps there. Now in this case, I pulled him so hard he lost his balance here. This isn't likely to happen, but if it does, you can switch to a half Nelson. Why? Because it keeps his head down. Now straighten your back up. I can pretty much keep him down with one hand because his back is bent. Okay, that's the only reason I would switch to one of these. Now try to deploy that with the other hand. Now you get to here and you're in the same situation, but you've got way more leverage. In this position, he's top heavy, head heavy, so it'd be easy to drive him down onto the ground. And again, I happen to get there early, so I've got a finger here, so I can use that just to peel the grip off. But again, do not rely on this. Do not think I'm going to start making the guy do this little piggy jig like I was taught when I was a kid in, small circle jiu-jitsu. It's a good handle, but you got to get a hold of that weapon, get it out of his hands. Okay, so what is the difference between the two? It was actually his posture that allows me to apply more leverage. Why? Because he's in a weaker biomechanical position. So if that happens, take advantage of it. So he pushes on me, I catch him here, and I'm able to give him a shove. If I happen to pull him off balance that bad, remember the rule here for chokes and head control. If I get his head below the level of my shoulders, then perfect. And if I'm using this Russian drag position, my hand just naturally goes in the back of his head. Now this gives me a lot of leverage. If he's got a small of the back concealment, I can get right to the weapon. If he's trying to fight for it, again, I can't lose sight of my primary goal, which is to make sure he doesn't deploy that weapon. If I'm early, maybe I get there. And now, once again, I'm in good shape, okay? So like so many other aspects of self-defense, the art of not hesitating is an art in itself. You have to practice, and think about moving aggressively. Once you know there's a threat, you have to get out of the idea of hesitation. For people who have never faced real-world self-defense situations, there's a lot of denial happens. Is this really happening? Is this guy really this big an asshole? Is this guy really armed? We've all been through that. Like I say, I've walked into 2 armed robberies in my life in a relatively small town, and your mind is on different things. You're going to fill your car up, and you're sitting there. Suddenly, you see some guy with a big, huge knife in his hand, and you have to go from 0 to 60 all at once. That takes training to overcome that. And most of the time, you're going to have that moment of hesitation. So we got to try to control that and not make overly big motions where we start creating more space, depending on what our tactical goals are, of course. All right. So again, when you're dealing with a push, or he's just standing here keeping you at bay, and now he's got a carry in the front. Okay. So I need to try to get to that. I can't try to fight through the barrier here, just like we did in our pushing and pulling defenses. So I don't want to try to fight with a guy like this. So as he pushes on me, you can see this is counterproductive. Push hard, I can get here, and again, I get my hand on it, I get 2, and then I'm gonna go behind him once again. We're in the same scenario. If I get 2 on 1 here, it's pretty strong. You have a good chance of keeping that down, and then we're gonna have to use countermeasures from there, which we'll look at a little bit later. What happens when we put him on the ground? Can we sandwich him with his weapon between the ground, his body weight, and your body on top? We'll talk about that a little later.